Hi, as we embark upon the holiday of Chanukah, it's interesting to observe how many connections there are between the holiday of Chanukah and the story of Yosef and his brothers. And invariably, there's always a connection in time, because we always have Shabbos Chanukah and the holiday of Chanukah coinciding with those parshios when we read about Yosef and his brothers. Allow me to share a possible connection between the two. We know that one of the features that Yosef had as a young man was acquiring the love of his father because he was a ben zekunim, because he was the youngest. How does a father who wants to protect his youngest boychik, how does he show him his love? It says, "V'Yisrael ahaves Yosef mikol banav ki ben zekunim hulo, ve'asalo kesones pasim." He makes for him a beautiful coat. The word pasim sometimes is translated as of many colors, but it could also be translated as the Medrash does, to say that it went down to his pasim, the sleeves, went all the way down to the palms of his hand. Now, why would a father who wants to show his love to a child make a child a coat that goes all the way over the palms of his hands? I think the reason is because when a father wants to be protective of a child, he makes a coat to represent that kind of protectiveness. You cover the hands to show, my little boychik, stay out of trouble. Every time your hands are lifted in order to do something perhaps that you shouldn't be doing, to grab that cookie from the cookie jar or something else that you should keep your hands out of, look at your hands and you'll see the sleeves that I've made for you to protect you from doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. We have a common theme also in the prophet Zechariah. When we read about, over Shabbos Chanukah, we read about the story of a vision that the prophet Zechariah has about one of the very first Kohen Gadols, the high priests of the Second Temple era, whose name is Yehoshua. And in that vision, Yehoshua sees Yehoshua Kohen Gadol wearing bigadim tsoim, wearing dirty clothes. And the angel tells the high priest, he says, "Remove those dirty clothes from off yourself so that I can place beautiful vestments upon you. I can adorn you with beautiful clothing." And according to the commentaries, what this is a reflection of is the fact that here we are, a generation that is entering Eretz Yisrael after 70 years in a Babylonian diaspora existence, victims of assimilative forces from the external. We've become affected negatively from the external influences that is represented by our dirty clothes. It's time, says the prophet, to put on a new set of clothes, to be now protected because you're in a holy environment within Eretz Yisrael. But now here comes the common link between Yosef and the story of the Chashmonaim. What do we find with what happened to Yosef? What happened in particular to his beautiful coat? He's sold down to Egypt, sans his beautiful coat. In other words, despite all of his father's efforts to protect him, that precious little boychik, and to make sure that he would be safe, the brothers strip the coat off of Yosef, they tear it into pieces and remove it from Yosef so that he can no longer be protected by that coat. They throw him proverbially to the wolves. He gets thrown down and sold into slavery into Egypt, a place of absolute, abject tumah, impurity, and he has to fend for himself. It's because sometimes in life, no matter how much people wish to protect us, no matter how much our parents want to protect us, God has other plans, and he tells us, you need to develop your inner core. Don't act upon the protective efforts of others, but find your own voice and find your own inner strength, and use that strength to project outwards and be a source of light and inspiration for other people. And you can't do that if other people are trying to protect you from the external pressures and the vicissitudes of the outside world. And this is where we get to the story of the Chashmonaim. As much as Zechariah has this beautiful vision of the Jewish people coming back to Eretz Yisrael and experiencing protection from the negative external influences of the diaspora, alas, this was not to be, because only a few generations further we get to the period of the Hasmoneans, which even in the Holy Land we see a manifestation of the impurity of the Hellenizing forces of the Yevanim, of the Greeks. And despite all of the efforts of having a purely holy environment with a temple and with priests, Nonetheless, the Greeks are successful in infiltrating the deepest recesses of the Jewish heart and the Jewish soul, which is represented metaphorically by how they're able to defile even the oil, even the menorah that's in their inner recesses of the temple. And so therefore, in a sense, those beautiful vestments that the prophet Zechariah prophesies that are supposed to be placed upon the Kohen Gadol, just like when Yosef was stripped of his kesonas pasim, so too the Jewish people as a whole were stripped of that protective garment that Eretz Yisrael during the Second Temple was supposed to represent. And we too had to find our own inner voice. And that's represented by the struggle and the battle of the Hashmonaim against the Greeks. It wasn't just a struggle to regain the external purity of the temple, but it was the struggle to be able to eradicate the internal voice and the internal intellect that had been infiltrated by the Greeks, and to purify that and to make it into a voice of Torah once again, to eradicate all of the contamination of the intellect that the Yevanim, that Greek philosophy, purportedly represented to the Jewish people. And so that's the real miracle of Chanukah, is that it doesn't represent the protective forces of without, but rather represents just the opposite. When stripped of those protective garments that Hashem always wants us to have, and that our parents and our protectors always want us to have, we, the Jewish people, are capable of finding our inner voice. Sometimes in Jewish communal structures, it's very healthy to live in a very sheltered environment. But sometimes, depending upon an individual's circumstances, that's not possible. And those are the times when the person has to find the inner voice to be able to project the light outwards. And that's why we light the menorah on the windowsill or on the doorway, so that the light of the candles isn't just a light for ourselves, but it projects a light out into the darkness. The only way that we as the Jewish people are going to be able to change the world is if we find our inner core, purify it, and then we can be a positive influence to the rest of the world. So I wish you a very happy Freilich and Chanukah. May we all find our inner core. May we find that purity that exists within each and every Jew, and may we truly shine a light upon the rest of the world.